We gather this morning to share words of praise, of honor, of thanks on this Thanksgiving weekend, as we recall with great affection a beloved wife, a beloved mother, a beloved grandmother, a beloved daughter and sister, aunt and friend, Sandra Rosenthal, known to many as Sandy. Today we remember a wonderful woman who lived a beautiful life. We'll begin our service this morning reading from Psalm 23. First I'll read in the Hebrew, and then you're welcome to join with me in the English. Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai ro'i lo achsar, binotesha yarbitzeni al mei menuchot yanaleni. Nafshi yeshavev yancheni b'maglei tzedek leman shemo. Gam ki elech b'getz al mavet lo irara ki ata imadi. Shiftecha mishantecha hemi yanachamuni. Talok lefanai shocha neged sorarai dishanta v'shem enorsi kasida v'ya. Aktov v'chesed yudafuni kol yemei chayai v'shati v'es Adonai li'orach yamim. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. L'kol zaman ve'et v'chol chefetz tachat hashamayim. Our Bible teaches a season is set for everything, a time for every experience under heaven, a time for planting and a time for reaping, a time for keeping, a time for discarding, a time for loving and a time for hating, a time for embracing and a time for refraining, a time for laughing and a time for weeping, a time for dancing, a time for wailing, a time for speaking, a time for silence, a time for birthing, a time for dying, a time for seeking, and a time for losing. Today we gather to remember a very special woman. Our beloved Sandy has departed from this world with a good name. She returns home in peace at the age of 80. Sandy has left behind many in mourning. Her beloved husband of 57 years, Jeremy. The apples of her eye, her children, Seth and daughter-in-law Stephanie, and Lori and son-in-law Mark, and the diamonds in her crown, her 4 grandchildren, Aaron, Simon, Sydney, and Ellie, her sister-in-law Elaine, nephews and niece Andy, Michael, and Sherry. Sandy now joins her parents of blessed memory, Esther and Alexander Katz, and her brother, Dr. James Katz, all in their eternal home in heaven. The family has some very special tributes, and first I'd like to call up granddaughter Ellie.
Hello everyone. Today we gathered to celebrate the life of my Mimi, Sandy Rosenthal. Mimi was probably the most unique person I knew and will have ever known. Let's start by talking about this shopaholic. This woman was the craziest shopper I knew. She had about 50 of the same leggings, 100 of the same turtlenecks, and so many golf shirts. There were 2 middle-sized rooms in Mimi and Papa's old house filled to the top with bags and bags of clothes. I would go back to visit her every couple months, look through the same bags, and somehow find something cool and unique every time. The jacket that I was wearing as I walked in is Mimi's, and I will think of her every time I wear it. Next are Mimi's jobs. Her family owned an art material store. She would always tell me that she was surrounded by art her entire life, yet she couldn't draw a straight line even with a ruler. I would show Mimi my drawings and would draw images of her. Every time she would be amazed and compliment it to its finest features. She said, "I learned from the best, my papa." I love thrift stores and always will. My Mimi volunteered at a thrift store for some time in her life, and that explained a lot of the cheap and some weird clothes. When I walk into an art or thrift store, I will always be reminded of Mimi and her silly quirks. My Mimi was sadly diagnosed with a disease called Alzheimer's. This illness slowly took away memories of people in her life that she never thought she would lose. Sadly, though we all recently lost Mimi, it feels as if I lost her a while ago. It started with forgetting my name and slowly forgetting who I was in her life and what I was doing in her house. I had and will always have so much empathy for her. Not knowing the little things and feeling constantly confused must have been exhausting and draining. Through this time in her life, she was able to show love by connecting with strong hugs. My last good memories with Mimi are mostly about painting nails, the blue color to match mine, as well as making sure I'm not touching the needlepoint pillows. Mims worked hard on her pillows, and they were very important to her. They had lots of detail, and you can tell she worked hard on them. Mimi lost a lot of family while she was young. I can't imagine losing my dad when I was 13, and then my mom and siblings in my 30s and 40s. That must have been so hard. Luckily, Mimi had Papa, my mom, my uncle there to help her through a lot of the pain and the consequences of feeling that pain. She struggled for a long time in her life, and no one will ever know when she started to feel balanced again or if she ever felt balanced again. No matter what, her loved ones, including everyone in this room today, helped her the most we could, and I would hope she felt loved and had happy moments for the time in her life that she could remember. As we go through the grief of losing my grandmother, let's remember to go easy on ourselves. It's normal and okay to feel heartbroken and frustrated with the loss, and it's good to accept the emotions running through your heart and let yourself feel connected and grateful for the memories you had with Mimi. Go enjoy the rest of your day. After all, it's Mimi's favorite day of the year, Black Friday.
Thank you so much for being here with us. My mom, Sandy, lived a life full of love and meaningful connections. She was kind, down to earth, and respectful towards everyone in her life, and built and maintained lifelong friendships and relationships. She expressed her warmth and sincerity through her beautiful smile and her distinctive, hearty laugh. One value that Mom passed along to Seth and me was the importance of friendship. She appreciated and nurtured close friendships from all walks of life: high school, camp, college, the community, golf, bowling, and her many volunteer positions. She was loyal, fun, and reliable. She hosted annual Thanksgiving dinners and Passover Seders for 20-plus friends and family. She and my dad went out with friends most Friday and Saturday evenings during our childhood. They loved to vacation with friends in Mexico and the Caribbean. Mom wrote and sang songs of limericks for every friend's milestone birthday, as well as every golf-themed day. She was thoughtful, considerate, and selfless. When she was in my home, she would constantly ask how she could help or what she could do, even during her most recent visit. She was always friendly with Seth's and my friends, and more recently with her amazingly wonderful and supportive caregiving and hospice teams. My mom devoted her life to being a mom. She was incredibly supportive, unconditionally loving, and always had my back. She gave me advice on friends and boys and proofread my papers in high school. I could tell her anything, and she never judged me. She taught me empathy and how to listen and was a tremendous emotional support for me, qualities that I'm attempting to pass on to my daughters. I am the person I am because of her. An avid sports fan, Mom proudly attended every football, basketball, baseball, volleyball, and softball game of Seth's and mine through junior high and high school. She never drove on highways, so it would take her 2 hours to get to the west side or wherever we were playing, but she was always there, with bells on, as she would say. Mom loved animals, especially dogs, and was a very devoted dog mom as well. Caesar, Can-Can, Poppy Seed, Lily, Gypsy, and Blizzard were members of the family. She loved playing golf for the game, but probably more for the friendships she made. She relished spending her summer days on the golf course. She also enjoyed tending to her many plants all over the house and garden, chocolate, doing crossword puzzles, going to the library every week, and plowing through books, bowling, and discount shopping, as Ellie so eloquently described. Mom passed down her love for clothes to my daughters, Sydney and Ellie. Her hand-me-downs are very prominently featured in their wardrobes. They proudly tell their friends when they are wearing Mimi's sweatshirts. Married for 57 years, my parents' love story was a special one. They've known each other since Lomond Elementary School. They had a unique communication style filled with sweet nothings, bickering about mostly trivial things, and, of course, lots of F-bombs. They alternated your fault months to alleviate some of the bickering. Beneath it all, their love was solid and pure, and it worked. They enjoyed playing golf together, vacations in warm, sunny places, attending Cleveland Orchestra concerts, boggle tournaments, cheering on the Cleveland sports teams, spending time with friends, and visiting with Seth and me and our families. The past few years have been difficult, but my dad has been incredibly loving and sweet with my mom, and they never lost their spark. As Ellie remarked, Mom battled Alzheimer's for the past several years. While it is a terrible and heartbreaking disease, she managed to maintain her sense of humor and her sweet demeanor. Even in her final days, she threw kisses to anyone who entered her room. As Seth and I went through the many, many, many boxes of memorabilia in the house, I came across a poem that my mom wrote when she was just 8 years old. "'Twas spring again. I thought of winter's glory and again of autumn's grace, then summer with its beauty, but none could take spring's place. I looked up at the hillside and the birds began to sing. The daffodils were blooming. I knew it now was spring. The white clouds were so fluffy. The buds were on the tree. The bubbling brook came flowing past the budding bush and me. The smell of new grass filled the air. The tulips all were out, and shouts of children could be heard. 'Twas spring without a doubt."
Thank you, Ellie and Lori. And now, Sandy's son, Seth.
Good morning, everyone. I join my sister in thanking you all for being here. The way my mom swung a golf club was a thing to behold. Those of you who saw it know what I mean. And you know I don't mean it was textbook or flawless. Just the opposite. It completely defied convention. Rather than addressing the ball with her feet evenly spaced towards where she wanted to hit it, she put one foot in front of the other like a closed batting stance in baseball. Hunched over, and to keep from slicing the ball, rather than putting the face of the club square towards the ball, she put the toe of the club at the ball. So it looked something like this. Because she was positioned that way, it was impossible for her to take the club straight back. So what she did is she lifted it over her head, helicoptered around, and then lunged through the ball. It was wild, and it drew attention, a lot of onlookers. But despite all the complexity, she often made good contact, and she usually hit it straight. In a lot of ways, that unruly swing of my mom's resembled her life. She was a rule follower, no doubt. She colored inside the lines. But not everything about her life was linear or by the book or conventional. Like her swing, she was high-spirited and complicated and lively, and yes, her life could be a little messy. But there's little doubt that she connected, and then when it came to the big things in life, the important things, she got it just right. Because of what Mom has been through for the last decade, first successfully confronting a late-in-life alcoholism, and then battling with an unforgiving disease that gradually and then more quickly robbed her of her faculties, it's sometimes hard to remember this. Sometimes hard to remember that Mom got the big things right, that she connected. The unassailable fact that hers was a life well lived, and the equally unassailable fact, probably even more important to her, that she made a good and fulfilling life for those close to her, for my dad, for me, my sister, and our families. We're fortunate that over the past few months, events that might otherwise be called difficult or unpleasant or distressing have reminded us of all of this. And it's funny how that works. How what's difficult or distressing or unpleasant ends up accentuating what's uplifting and positive and good. First, there was my mom's Alzheimer's. If you read about Alzheimer's, if you had a loved one who's had Alzheimer's, if you talk to medical professionals about Alzheimer's, you know that as the disease progresses, many people become angry and frustrated at their confusion, at losing touch. But that was not my mom. That's not what happened to her. As her disease progressed, whatever bitterness she felt about life simply seemed to melt away, exposing and laying bare what lie at her core: genuine warmth and genuine kindness. As my sister said, when people would walk into the room, she would reach out her hand and she would pucker up to kiss you, and she would tell you she loved you. And mind you, that she didn't know who I was at this point. She didn't know who my sister was. She didn't know who her caregivers were. But that's who she was. In fact, when we moved her into assisted living at Anthology a few months ago, this summer, she sort of became known as the kissing bandit of assisted living there. She was in the memory care unit, and she would get up from the table where she was eating, and she would go over to the people eating next to her, and she would lay her hands on them, and she would give them a kiss. The folks at Anthology had to tell her caregivers, look, it's COVID. You can't do that. Not that it was ever an appropriate social convention, but there's something to Stevie Wonder's line, who my mom also loved: kindness knows no shame. And that's how my mom lived her last days. And something about my mom's amazing hospice and caregiving team. Suzanne and Dr. Barbara and Cindy of hospice and her caregiving team. Anna, Dottie, Jackie, Carol, and especially Cassandra, who was her rock. They were simply amazing. And yes, they're partly responsible for the exhibition of warmth, my mom's exhibition of warmth during her final days. But as amazing as her caregivers were, they didn't change her. Rather, they brought out her true personality and allowed her to live her last few years with dignity as the warm and kind person that she was at heart. It's one of the first things, or that's probably the first thing that an otherwise difficult time has really brought to the surface. But another considerable challenge, as my sister mentioned, of cleaning out my parents' house of 46 years. My mom was a pack rat and not a particularly organized one. As it turns out, my dad's a little worse. But when I say there was 46 years of accumulated stuff to go through, there was 46 years of accumulated stuff to go through. My wife, Stephanie, always conjures up the best images, always. And she explained it this way, with just a hint of her classic exaggeration. Imagine that for 50 years, you had somebody come home every day, dig into their pockets, empty out pads of Post-it notes, paper clips, golf tees, receipts, nail clippers, and dump them into whatever receptacle, cabinet, or drawer was not already full, because someday you might need it. That was my mom. When I said before that her life could get messy, I was not being simply literal. That was figurative. But because my mom threw nothing away, she left a lifetime of mementos and keepsakes scattered around the house to sift through. And when I say scattered around, I mean scattered around. And through those mementos and keepsakes, we were fortunate to be reminded in a very poignant way of everything that defined her. The number of photos, slides, old movie films, it was amazing. My sister and I had some idea that these things were in the house. We knew that she kept them in a particular location. But as we started digging through closets and drawers, we recognized just how much of it there was. We had an initial idea that we'd be able to go through it all as we were cleaning out the house. And then we simply threw up our hands and said, let's get some big bins and just carry them back to D.C. and we'll deal with it later. And I think at the end we probably have 6 or 7 massive bins of photographs and albums and slides. And those photographs, albums, slides, movies are of relatives spanning the generations. One of my favorite things that I found, because Mom threw nothing away, was the naturalization papers for her grandfather, whose name was Sandrowitz when he came over, and he shortened it to Sanders. And in 1903, he was naturalized. And there we have it from the Cuyahoga Court of Common Pleas, his naturalization papers. Really something. And then there were the photos of the Friday Night Gang, the Richardsons, the Johans, the Blackhursts, the Nevins, golf outings with her many, many golfing friends, bowling pictures, pictures of Thanksgiving dinners with our cousins, the Katzes, pictures of Passover Seders with our cousins, the Katzes, but also friends, non-Jewish friends, the Johans and the Richardsons, who joined us every year, just as we joined them at their Christmas tree trimmings. Trips with friends to the warm and sunny places that my mom talked about. And beyond the pictures, there were cards, just a massive number of cards, birthday cards for every special occasion that my mom kept. Those rhyming couplets and limericks that my mom would keep, that she wrote for every special occasion and delivered. Wedding invitations, bar mitzvah invitations, she threw none of it away. And this accumulation of pictures and mementos reinforced just how much she poured into her family and how much she poured into her lifelong friendships. And she was a great friend. My cousin Andy texted the other day and said, because Andy and his wife Janet live in Fort Wayne, their kids live in Virginia. My cousin Michael and Linda, they live in New Jersey, and their kids are scattered. My cousin Sherry and her husband Andrew, they live in Florida, and their kids are in school in Florida. But as it turned out, they were all going to be in Cleveland for Thanksgiving this year with their mother Elaine. And Andy texted, it was almost as if Sandy planned to pass away just now to ensure that we could all be together. And a note about her friends, her lifelong friends. I see Sheila in the audience and Billy. Sheila and my mom had been friends since kindergarten, talked every day of their lives together. And she had a lot of friends like that she accumulated and never let go. She was loyal, she was thoughtful, she was true. And as Lori said, that's a value she passed down to both of us, without lectures, without sit-downs, just quietly by example. But it wasn't only that. She facilitated my sister and my friendships too. Our house was a gathering place for my friends and a gathering place for my sister's friends. It was among the most welcoming places, the most welcoming homes in Shaker Heights. Everyone knew where our spare key was so they could let themselves in. And as one of my friends, Peter Stern, reminded me this week, whenever a friend would walk in the door, she would recite their whole names and welcome them. Adam Lehman, Peter Stern, David Horsfall. And then she'd invite them to the kitchen table and chop it up a little bit. And I've come to learn this week because in a number of texts I've had with friends, they all seem to remember a particular kind of food that my mom kept in the house. And I think I've come to the conclusion now that my mom actually laid traps for them. There were the intimate donuts in the pantry for Blake. There was the grape juice in the back of the refrigerator for Gulam. There was the Sunny Delight for Pete Stern. And although this was news to me, for David Horsfall, there was matzah with butter and some cinnamon sugar on top, which I think is just a sign that my mom appreciated Shaker's diversity in all its dimensions. But those friendships, those lifelong friendships that I've had and that my mom helped nurture, that my sister has and that she helped nurture for her, those have been sustaining for me and sustaining for her. And we know they will be the rest of our lives. We have Mom to thank for that. Going through all the old stuff in the house underscored another defining feature of my mom's life. It's that her warmth and kindness was not confined to family and friends, but it extended to her community as well. Again, she didn't throw anything away. There was a drawer full of stuff from the days that she volunteered and served on the board at Belfair, a great organization that provides educational and behavioral health services to at-risk youth. Another drawer for all of her work at the National Council of Jewish Women, where she served as vice president of thrift shops for probably 15 years. Another drawer for all the work that she did with the Cleveland Women's Golf Association, where she served a term as president. And then there was other stuff. There was the Fernway, there were copies and copies of the Fernway Flash. Fernway was our elementary school, and my mom helped assemble that newsletter and contributed to it. There was another box of stuff for the Shaker Heights High School Hall of Fame. My mom was on the inaugural committee and helped plan several of the initial galas for that. And then there were programs and news clippings from high school sporting events, ours and even others. And then there were programs from banquets, from volleyball, from baseball, from basketball. And of course, there was her trusty, and she never threw it away, Shaker Heights Red Raiders seat cushion, which she took to every single game of me and my sisters. But all these boxes of paper showed how much Mom poured herself not only into family and friends, but into her community, or her communities to be exact, because there were several. And my sister and I are the beneficiaries of her community building efforts, and in particular, her effort to sustain and nurture the community where we grew up, Shaker Heights, where my mom lived her whole life, 80 years, all within a 2-mile radius, and she never wanted to leave. A number of others here today, both virtually and here with us personally, are the beneficiaries too. And we know and appreciate that you are here to pay tribute to Mom, because Mom helped make the Shaker Heights of our youth the special community it was and still is. It's a community that shaped our identities in immutable, profound ways, that endowed us with a sense of place, that gave us the proverbial roots to know where home is, and the wings to explore and to grow. It would be a false conceit to suggest that Mom played some outsized role in creating that special community. There were countless others with Mom, many of you here today, many of the parents of the people here today, who created and sustained that community for us, that gave us all that special sense of place. But there's little doubt that Mom played her unique part, and that Mom left her mark. And when I picture Mom taking that golf club back in the unorthodox way of hers, lifting it over her head, and launching all 98 pounds of her tiny frame through the ball, I know that this was the purest shot, the truest shot she ever hit. Lori and I are proud of that, and we're forever grateful. We love you, Mom.
To Ellie, Lori, and Seth, incredible tributes to your mom and your grandma. The rabbis say that words that come from the heart enter our hearts. It truly has. Our Bible teaches these words about a woman who is very special in our lives. Eshet chayil miimsa v'rachab mikra bata bale bala v'shala lo yaksar. What a precious find is an Eshet chayil, a woman of valor. Her worth is far beyond rubies. Her husband puts his confidence in her and lacks no thing. She is good to him, never bad, all the days of her life. She opens up her hand to the needy. She extends her hand to the poor. She is clothed with strength and splendor. She looks to the future cheerfully. She opens her mouth with wisdom. Her tongue is guided by kindness. She oversees the activities of her household and never eats the bread of idleness. Her children come forward and bless her. Her husband praises her, saying, "Many women have done superbly, but you surpass them all." Charm is deceitful and beauty vain. A God-fearing woman is much to be praised. We shall extol her for the fruit of her hand, and whenever people gather, her deeds shall speak her praise. That was Sandy. She was incredibly strong and resilient, as we already heard, overcoming so many obstacles. She was also so incredibly sweet and warm. Thoughtful and kind, she was a good neshama, a good soul. So full of life and spunky, active, involved, athletic, very smart and giving. She called herself a professional volunteer, dedicating so much of her life to others. Voracious reader, excellent writer. Sandy held the coveted role as the substitute writer for Violet Spivak's column for the Cleveland Jewish News. No one else could claim that. So good with words, she had a great sense of humor. She loved her puns and making people laugh, even with her sailor's mouth. Her amazing friend Sergol She really had the ability to sustain friendships. And as you already heard, the truth is that for Sandy, family always came first. She loved all of you and lived for you. You already heard, born and raised here in Cleveland. I'd like to just share the story of how Jeremy and Sandy met. Although you heard they already knew each other from Lowmont Elementary School, both being from Shaker, it was only after college when they really met for the first time. Jeremy, you told me this story. One night, you were at your friend Stan's playing chess at his apartment building at Van Aken, and two of you decided that you wanted to go out for a drink. So you went into the convertible and pulled out of the building, and there you saw Sandy. Sandy was just standing there outside the building. Her grandmother, Nanny, had a place in that same apartment building. And Stan said, "Hey, that's Sandy Katz." And as you told me, Jeremy, you said, "She looked pretty good to you." You and Stan made an agreement that you would both take her out, but you flipped a coin to see who would get the first date and who would get the second date. As luck would have it, Stan won the flip. He got the first date, but we know who really won. Jeremy, you took out Sandy the second week. You told me you knew that there was something special from that first time, but there was a problem. You each were already dating someone else. You told me, Jeremy, that you quickly dumped your other girl, but Sandy was dating a guy who was in town working from Syracuse. Jeremy, you had a Friday night date with her. Saturday night was with the guy from Syracuse. But perhaps as luck would have it, he was transferred that same week back to Syracuse. Well, we say that perhaps something intervened, and the rest is history. You were engaged just a few months later, then married on August 9, 1964, at B'nai Yeshurun Heights Temple, with your uncle, Rabbi Rosenthal, and Cantor Meisels officiating, honeymooning in warm weather, St. John, Puerto Rico, and Florida, together enjoying a life filled with so much love together. You already heard that Sandy was a supportive and involved mother. Your home was the hub for all your friends. Laura, you told me when you were in elementary school, you'd walk home for lunch, usually taking a friend or two with you. Mom would have the SpaghettiOs ready to eat if you were home. A proud grandma, she came in for every birth and almost every birthday until they stopped traveling. It was so special there to have Sandy there for Sydney and Ellie's double Benot mitzvah. You told me that the grandkids felt so close to their grandma, even with the physical distance from Cleveland to D.C. And as Sandy's memory loss started and accelerated, the grandkids, all of them, were incredibly patient, always so sweet to their grandmother. Sandy made her specialties for all of you, her Texas sheet cake, her homemade spaghetti sauce, those Passover meringues with the chocolate chips, her béarnaise sauce, the noodle kugel that Lori still makes, the matzo ball soup that was a family recipe that both Seth and Lori make, and the charoset. You told me that as an animal lover, you already named all the dogs, Lori, 1 or 2 dogs at a time. There was a question, though, who she liked more, the dogs or the kids in the house. A lover of people, she was a greeter at the JCC and at Steinmart, always a thoughtful and loyal friend. You wrote in the notice that Sandy's happy place was curled up on the couch with her dog, reading a book or working on a crossword puzzle, with the boombox blaring, quietly cheering on the Indians or Cavs, appreciating a recording of the Cleveland Orchestra, or maybe cursing loudly at talk radio. That was Sandy. I think you summed her up to a T. I think, as Seth said, there was some sort of fate happening that we're gathering here today on Thanksgiving weekend, on this Black Friday, as you said, Ellie. She was the consummate host. Thanksgiving or Passover were her 2 big holidays. She loved having the family together here at home in Cleveland. Feeling Sandy's loss, It's special that we're able to all be together, so many that wouldn't have been together even without COVID. I think she planned it. This was an opportunity to give thanks to her together and to be together as one large family. Family summed her up beautifully, a true woman of strength that was sweet to her core. May those legacies always be remembered and carried on. At this point, we're going to rise as we continue with the memorial prayer. El Malirachamim, Shochein Bamromim, Semenukhanachona, Tachan Katpei Ashechina, Bamalot Kiroshim Torim, Kezorak Yamasirim, and Nishmat, Sarah Badaram Vester, Shachal Olama, Beganeden Temenuchata, Anna Barachamim, Asire Basitakana Vakli Yolamim, Muturbatsurchem and Nishmata, Ronayuna Kalata, Betanok Bashalom Amishkava, Venamar, Amen. Exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure to the soul of our beloved Sandra Rosenthal, Sarah, the daughter of Aaron and Esther, who has gone to her eternal home. Merciful One, we ask that her loved one find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May she merit the reward for living a life filled with righteousness, kindness, and love. May her soul be bound up in the bond of life, and may she rest in peace. And we all say, Amen. Please be seated. Following this service, we'll continue on for burial at B'nai Yeshurun's Chesterland Memorial Park. The family will be sitting Shiva tomorrow, Saturday, from 5 to 8 p.m. at Cleveland Marriott East. That's on Harvard Road in Warrensville Heights. We'll be having an evening minyan service, approximately 6:45 tomorrow night, for those that would like to join. The family has asked for donations. Those who are making donations, if you would like to do so in Sandy's memory, you can do so to the Jewish Federation of Cleveland or the Alzheimer's Association. May we all only remember Sandy with blessings, with kindness and love. And we say, Amen. Dear Sandra,